Have you ever noticed how the very first book you read by an author, it can sort of color your entire perception of their work? It really sets an expectation, doesn't it? Sometimes it's a definite wow, other times maybe more meh, and it just really changes how you approach, everything else they've written. Today we're doing a deep dive into an analysis of Gillian Flynn's Sharp Objects, and we're drawing from some really fantastic source material you've provided. We'll be exploring some truly fascinating ideas, things like generational trauma, the really complex ways characters can develop through pain, and also the powerful, sometimes kind of suffocating role of reputation, especially in small towns.
Yeah, and what's great is that this deep dive, it really goes far beyond just a simple book review. We're connecting the dots, essentially, between those initial experiences we have with authors, like you said, and then the very deliberate narrative choices you see in crime fiction, and linking that to some pretty profound psychological insights into, well, family dynamics and societal pressures. Our mission here is really to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, to give you a fresh, maybe more nuanced perspective on storytelling and maybe even human nature itself.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this. Let's maybe kick off with that intriguing observation from your notes about starting an author's work. It points out that when a novel by a writer is, particularly likable, people tend to seek out more of their stuff, often hoping to relive that initial moment, that connection.
Mm-hmm.
But more often than not, those other works, even if they're good on their own, they kind of struggle to live up to those
Right.
incredibly high expectations. It's almost like you're just destined to compare everything to that first really impactful read.
Mm.
It creates this cycle that's kind of hard to break.
It really highlights this fascinating conundrum for readers, doesn't it? Your source suggests, like if you pick an outstanding first book, you might find yourself on a path of disappointment, with their subsequent work, always chasing that initial high.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, if your first encounter is with maybe a less compelling novel, you might just decide, okay, I'm done with this author. And you could potentially miss out on their real masterpieces.
Seriously.
It makes you wonder how much our very first impression dictates our entire future engagement with an artist or a writer. Is it all just, I don't know, timing and luck?
It absolutely feels like a gamble.
Mm.
And the material you shared gives some great examples. Like take John Green, for instance. The reader started with The Fault in Our Stars, found it deeply unsatisfying. Then, Looking for Alaska was only, quote, somewhat bearable, before Paper Towns turned out to be amazing. So it's a real journey sometimes, just finding the right entry point.
Wow, yeah.
And for Gillian Flynn, the reader began with Gone Girl, which was, a massive phenomenon.
Huge, yeah.
Your source even suggests Gone Girl might have, started the entire line of books where every character is an asshole.
Interesting take.
Yeah, citing popular thrillers like Girl on the Train or Behind Closed Doors as examples of this trend, where everyone's morally compromised. There's always some shocking twist.
Right, that sort of unreliable narrator, dark secrets vibe.
Exactly. So this kind of initial impression definitely sets a particular lens, through which someone might then approach a book like Sharp Objects. Let's shift gears a bit and dive into Sharp Objects itself. Your notes describe the book's starting point as somewhat, cliche. A reporter returning to her hometown to cover murders, and in doing so, she uncovers her own past, finds answers she'd always been running from. It definitely feels like a familiar setup, right?
It does, yeah. It sounds familiar on the surface, but your source makes a really powerful point here. This isn't just some convenient plot device. It's actually seen as a foundational truth in crime fiction. A deliberate choice, really, to force characters to confront themselves in the most visceral way possible. The insight here, the core idea, is that intense pain just strips away all the pretense.
Right, sir.
It reveals our raw, true selves, often this kind of primal, maybe even selfish focus on just survival. When you're truly hurting, the world around you just fades, and your inner self comes right to the forefront, totally uncaring of external judgment.
Exactly. And the source goes on to explain this brilliant narrative technique for doing this, which I found really insightful. Instead of immediately just hitting us with the protagonist's profound pain, the story makes her go through other people's pain first, a second layer of pain as it's described.
Oh, okay.
This allows the story to unfold bit by bit like an onion, slowly peeling back these layers of suffering rather than cutting straight to the core of her trauma right away.
Right.
It strategically creates that narrative space, gives the story room to breathe and develop.
That really sheds light on why we so often encounter those characters, like the, depressed detective or the somber police inspector in crime fiction.
Yeah.
Your source suggests that when you're consistently immersed in death and tragedy, it inevitably shapes you. You don't really have the luxury of being lighthearted or joyful in public because society expects a certain solemnity.
Right.
You have to embody, or at least pretend to embody, sadness. And as the source posits, the more you practice this role, the more it kind of absorbs you, shaping your very identity until you quite literally become what you practice.
Wow.
It's a pretty powerful commentary on how our environment can really dictate our emotional landscape.
And in Sharp Objects, this is so directly applicable to our protagonist, Camille. She's a crime reporter, right?
Yeah.
Delving into the grim reality of these teenage girl murders. Her sadness, as your notes emphasize, isn't just for her current harrowing work. It's deeply intertwined with her own past life. This layering of sorrow is, I think, what makes her character so profoundly compelling and, well, authentic. Okay, so here's where it gets, I think, particularly interesting. Let's talk about generational trauma. It's a central, really devastating theme identified in your source material, focusing especially on the profound impact of mother-daughter relationships.
Yeah, this really hits on a crucial and often very subtle aspect of family dynamics, that intergenerational impact of emotional neglect. Your source uses that vivid phrase, the lack of mother love breed disjoint daughter,
Right.
which really illustrates how a profound absence of that foundational maternal affection can indeed lead to these deeply troubled, fearful, and attention-seeking behaviors later on. It's not just like a poetic idea. Psychology actually shows us how early attachment styles, or the lack of them, can ripple through a person's entire life, shaping their relationships, their self-perception, almost like a genetic predisposition in a way. The source does note its reasoning might be incomplete or maybe wrong, but the observation itself about the outcome of this dynamic feels powerfully true.
And in Sharp Objects, that mother-daughter relationship is just disturbingly complex. Chilling, really. Your notes describe it as full of coldness, a demand for love, rejection of warmth, fearfulness of coldness and terror that is always lurking.
Yeah.
And it's explicitly stated that it's not an abusive household in the traditional overt sense, which is interesting.
Right, not physical abuse necessarily.
Exactly.
Right.
However, the source highlights this crucial point. Sometimes making other people dependent on you is a form of abuse.
That's the key.
The mother, Adora, she likes taking care of people, and in doing so, she tries to make people depend on her so she can feel superior, taking care of them, feel motherly.
It's such a subtle yet incredibly damaging form of control.
Totally.
And this provides such vital context for understanding Adora's character, I think. The source suggests that she herself never got her mother's love, so she just doesn't have much to transfer in return.
Right. She can't give what she never received.
Exactly. So instead, she has this character to play. It's a performance of motherhood. And this is where those societal pressures really intertwine with personal history, creating this vicious cycle of inherited emotional patterns. She learned a certain way of relating, probably from her own upbringing, and tragically, she just perpetuates it.
That really brings us to the unique and often stifling role of small societies, as your material describes them. In these communities, the character you play is often more important than what you really are.
Yeah, the facade is everything.
Right. History isn't easily forgotten. Everyone knows whose forefathers did what, making it incredibly important to keep the things inside and secure for a clean legacy. Your ideal self becomes prevalent to your true self. It's like a constant performance for the whole community.
Stepping back, this gives us a much deeper understanding of Adora's motivations, doesn't it? She plays the part of a loving mother because, as your source points out, mothers in small communities are often held in the highest regard. They're seen as the ultimate caregivers, upbringers, protective, and always offensive when it comes to their child.
That intense pressure.
Exactly. That intense pressure to maintain the facade of the perfect mother, this deep fear of losing control, well, it can, as the source chillingly states, make anyone berserk. It drives her to do these unspeakable things fundamentally to preserve her carefully constructed image within this very insular world.
Moving to another really profound observation from the source, let's explore the idea of reputation, particularly for teenagers. It says, and this is quite a statement, teenagers have a reputation more important than any king.
Wow.
They need to be famous at any cost to climb the social ladder, and it's all driven by hormones and competitiveness. It's presented as this high-stakes, almost ruthless game in these small towns. And this all leads to Emma's chilling quote from the book, "You can only be perfect once you are dead."
Oof. Yeah, that quote from Alma is incredibly dark. But it does raise an important question for us to consider, maybe. Why do we treat the dead with such profound respect, even if their lives weren't, entirely blameless?
Yeah.
Your source offers a pretty compelling psychological reason. The dead are often seen as a reflection of ours. There's this inherent desire within us, maybe subconscious, to be treated gently once we are dead. So we tend to pour respect in advance, thinking we may get it in return after we die. It's almost like this preemptive act of kindness, hoping for future reciprocity.
Like cosmic insurance?
Kind of. And this idealized memory of the deceased, it allows a community to maintain its own collective self-image, right? To avoid confronting uncomfortable truths that might tarnish their shared narrative.
It's true. This becomes a normal consensus, as the source puts it, protecting each other's dark secrets.
Yeah.
Essentially making the dead people perfect.
Yeah.
It's this collective agreement to sanitize the past, particularly in a place like Wind Gap, where reputations are absolutely everything. And any stain on one family can feel like a stain on the entire community. It creates this powerful, often really unhealthy form of social cohesion. So bringing us back to the overall impression of Sharp Objects from your source, it describes it as a nice novel and recommends you read it with as little knowledge as you have about it.
Which is always the best advice for a thriller,
That's
right?
definitely. Go in blind. Experience those twists and turns firsthand.
Yeah. Although it's also worth acknowledging that common critique mentioned in your notes, that you might guess the murderer easily, because it really is very easy, maybe due to not enough characters to create doubt.
Right, I've heard that too.
But importantly, the source emphasizes that this is not the issue here. The true strength of the book isn't just the whodunit. It really lies in its masterful exploration of character, the insidious nature of trauma, and the complex psychological landscape of its protagonists.
Yeah.
The journey, I think, is way more important than the final reveal in this case.
And despite the heavy, really dark themes, the source characterizes the ending as satisfying, yet also profoundly miserable. And it leaves you with that poignant, sort of inescapable reflection. Some people are dealt with the wrong hands.
Yeah.
It's a stark truth that resonates, I think, far beyond the pages of the novel. So what does this all mean for us, wrapping up?
Our deep dive into Sharp Objects through your source material really illuminates how skilled authors like Flynn craft these narratives that just peel back layers and layers of pain. They explore the inherited burdens of family and offer this really biting critique of societal pressures, particularly around reputation. It's a powerful reminder, I think, that even in fictional stories, we can find these profound truths about our own lives and the world around us. Yeah, absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this deep dive kind of encourages us to consider how the stories we consume and maybe even the stories we live are shaped by those initial impressions, like we talked about at the start, by the pain we witness and experience, and by that constant tension between our true selves and the characters we sometimes perform for the world.
Yeah.
So it really makes you ask, how much of our perceived perfection or our public character is truly ours, and how much is just a performance for society, whether we're living or, as the book suggests, even after we're dead.
That's a heavy thought to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope you walk away with not just a better understanding of Sharp Objects, but maybe also a new lens through which to view the complex narratives that surround us every single day.